Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, December 18th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm very happy to be joined by Patrick Murphy. Patrick, I want to start off talking about J'Kaylin Dobbins and the excellent season he's putting together so far. I mean, there's been a lot made of it, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's been enough made of it. There's been so much going on, and he's gotten, a decent amount of attention. We know he's only the third Ohio State true freshman to ever, eclipse 1,000 yards in a season, the fourth freshman overall with redshirt freshman Mike Weber doing it last year. So Dobbins, right now, he's sitting on 1,190 yards. Here is where I think he just blows everybody away as far as how special he is. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry. 7.3 yards per carry. And this is a very good Ohio State offensive line with Billy Price and Jamarco Jones, or I should say a good one. But, there's been some times when they've struggled on the offensive line as well. So it's not like this is going to go down as one of the best offensive lines in Ohio State history, and he's just always running through gaping holes. But 7.3 yards per carry, that just jumps off the page at me. By comparison, Maurice Clarett was the last one to do it as a true freshman. He averaged 5.6 yards per carry, and that was a lot. Clarett averaging 5.6 yards per carry. So I feel like Dobbins isn't getting enough attention, Patrick.
I agree. I think that, for as good as he's been, when we talked about the offense a lot this year, we were, talking about the passing game, or, if JT Barrett was the guy for the job, and then JT goes out and has the Penn State game. We talk about JT if he's reached the level we thought he would, and a lot of it had to do with that, even the receivers. And when we did talk about JK, it was almost as a secondary thing. And I'm looking at his game log here, and the 29 attempts he had against Indiana were his career high so far. And then the next closest, I think, is 18, which he did against Michigan State. And so maybe part of that is by design of, the coaching staff and the offense to not overwork this kid, obviously coming off of, a high school season where he only played one snap because he got hurt so early. They've got Mike Weber. They've got other guys. They wanted to spread it around. But, yeah, Ohio State certainly has something special here, and a guy that can kind of take over as that next really great running back, I think, in this offense, because you mentioned some of the stats, but 6 games this year where he goes over 100 yards. The touchdowns were probably the only thing you could take away from him. Only 7 on the season, but a lot of times when they got in close, they either used Mike Weber or they used JT Barrett to kind of finish off those drives. So, I think those touchdowns will come. Obviously, I think we should also point out he has still one more game left to play to increase those numbers, which, I assume they will do a decent amount of running against USC. We'll see how it all breaks down. But, yeah, JK was great this year, had a chance to finish it off on a high note. And, I think that you're going to have for the next 2 years probably, a guy who can really make a dent in the record books like Ezekiel Elliott did a couple of years ago.
And USC is very susceptible to the run. We will get to that later in the show. So, yes, I do think he's not just going to add. He's going to really add on to those numbers. Before I move on to Mike Weber, one more thing I want to point out about J'Kaylin Dobbins, and you know this as well as anybody, Patrick, because we've gotten to interview him a decent amount, as far as true freshmen. We don't get to interview a lot of true freshmen, but we've interviewed him a decent amount this year. He is a great young man. I don't mean good. I mean, every vibe I get from him, everything I know about him, I mean, there's nothing fake about it. This is a kid that is not just a good kid. He is a great young man. Forget about football for a second. I mean, he's the type of kid that you'd let your daughter date, that type of young man.
Yeah, and, it's almost frustrating is not the right word, but when we've talked to him a handful of times, you want to talk about him, and he wants to talk about the team, or he wants to talk about the offensive line. And, he was asked the other day about, how as a guy who's 18 years old, who, because of that injury wasn't as highly recruited as he probably should have been, how do you manage, being this star on campus so quickly and having this success? And, he said, well, I don't really go out. I play video games with my friends and my teammates, and, I go to class, and, it's just not, he's not looking for this big limelight thing. It's when he scores a touchdown, sure, he celebrates, but it's mostly, going to find his offensive lineman and celebrating with the big guy and all that stuff. So it's cool to see. In today's age, you don't see that all the time. We've had plenty of Ohio State guys that have embraced that diva mentality, and I do think you need that from some players to kind of have the collective team. But to see a guy that is so young, so humble, and so talented is pretty cool.
And they could have just an embarrassment of riches at the running back position next year. It's been really good this year. But you get Dobbins with extra year under his belt, year stronger, full year with Mickey Marotti. I mean, what's he going to look like? Could he add a step, much like Mike Weber did this year? And I thought Mike Weber might go pro. I didn't necessarily think he was going to be. In fact, I flat out did not think he was going to be a high pick or anything. But I thought in this day and age, as Jalen Marshall's proven, many others, Tyvis Powell. I mean, as long as and those guys weren't even drafted, but they thought they were going to be like 6th or 7th round picks. They didn't care. They just wanted to go. They knew they weren't going to be high picks. So I thought Mike Weber would leave after this year. Maybe he still will, but there's been some rumors out there that he's at least leaning toward coming back. What are you hearing, and what do you think will happen with Mike Weber?
Yeah, I thought that there was a chance. If he was able to, if there had not been the injury at the beginning of the year that had limited him so much early on, had to miss 2 full games, and he was able to showcase himself a little bit more, I thought there was certainly a chance. Now it would surprise me a little bit more because I think he's not necessarily hurt his draft stock, but hasn't been able to build on it as much as he'd like. Still, I think a pretty good season for, a guy who missed as much time as he did and is splitting carries. Another 10 touchdowns he added to the 9 he had his freshman year. Didn't get anywhere near the 1,000 yards he had last year, but 608 is still pretty solid. We saw some more burst from him as he got healthier these last, 3 or 4 games down the stretch here, which I thought was impressive. And that's something that we talked about, last year with him. Does he have that breakaway speed that you need to kind of be an elite back? And I think we started to see it. So, those are things I could think he can continue to build on if he does indeed come back, which I think he will at this point. But like you said, nothing would surprise me. Any guy who's eligible, I think we should have on a list of there's a chance they could go pro because, like you said, I think Jalen Marshall was one that surprised everyone. Noah Brown last year after really only 1 year as a starter. So I think that anyone could do it. Mike obviously has the frame to be an NFL back. Whether he has the whole package to be as successful as he'd want to be, I think, that's something we could find out with another year of him coming back. But, I think it would be best for OSU to have these guys back just because you could continue that 2-headed monster in the backfield and maybe even add to that with some of the guys coming in, get some touches for the freshmen. I've been watching USC, and they tend to use 2 primary backs, but there's 3 or 4 guys that they get in there. So, if you can figure out ways to get more people touches, keep people healthy, I think that's better for them, especially when you get later in the season. So having an experienced guy like Mike to add to JK and the freshmen would be nice.
We're a mere 11 days away from the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. We'll be down there covering it, Ohio State, USC. Yes, I'm counting down the days. Kids are across the country, across the world are counting down the days for Christmas. I'm counting down the days to the Cotton Bowl. 11 days away. The Buckeyes are favored by 7.5 points, Patrick. I'm going to throw some stats at you. This is why I think this is a good matchup for Ohio State. Now, there's a lot more to it than this, but let's just look at total defense and total offense. Ohio State comes in with the number 6 total offense in the country. The Buckeyes are extremely balanced. They are the number 8 total defense in the country. So number 6 total offense, number 8 total defense in the country for the Ohio State Buckeyes. USC Trojans, good offensively, not as good as Ohio State. They're 15th in total offense in the country. Here's where USC is susceptible. They are 76th in the country in total defense. Now, Is Pac-12 offenses Are Pac-12 offenses better than Big Ten offenses? Hell yes, I get that. But still 76th in the country in total defense. Notre Dame crushed them. Listen, USC's beaten Ohio State 7 straight times. They got a ton of talent. They got a lot of guys that are going to play in the NFL, including the quarterback who might be the number 1 or number 2 pick of the draft. That's the most important position on the football field. I get all that. They're good. But 76th in the country in total defense, I like this matchup for Ohio State.
I do too, at least on paper. Looking at it, I think that all the stats that you brought up make a lot of sense in Ohio State's favor. I do think that with this month or so to prepare, obviously you never know what teams are going to cook up, but I think that the offense for USC will be something Ohio State will need to have to figure out how to handle, especially the passing game. Deontay Burnett is I think an NFL wide receiver in the making, and he's a guy that you would expect Denzel Ward to be shadowing the whole night. If he's matched up with any of the other cornerbacks on Ohio State, I'm slightly worried. But they can run the ball. They have some very good running backs, but Ohio State's shown that that's not an area I'm that concerned about. It's more the guys coming out of the backfield, the tight ends, because they do have both of those players that can make plays in ways that have hurt Ohio State. We saw it against Oklahoma. We saw it against Iowa in both the losses. We saw it even in some wins against Michigan early on. The linebackers were having some serious issues covering tight ends. So, that's something I assume that this team has focused on defensively throughout this break. But, that's where I think Ohio State can be vulnerable against USC. On the flip side, I think Ohio State should be able to move the ball. As you mentioned, the USC defense is not ranked very high. Notre Dame ran all over this team. If I'm Ohio State, sure, you want to throw the ball around some, send JT Barrett out with some decent numbers. But, if you want to focus on winning the game, I'm giving the ball to the running backs. Use the quarterback run when you need. But just try and run the ball as much as possible. This team cannot stop the run. And I think, as we talked about the two running backs, I think that they're two of the more talented guys in this game. If you do want to throw number 8 for USC's defense, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Reminds me a lot of his struggles this year. Reminds me a lot of Kendall Sheffield. A lot of pass interferences. Looks like he certainly has the talent, but hasn't put it together. That's a guy I think they could attack in the passing game. So I think there's a lot of ways that Ohio State wins this game. If USC is going to win it, I think it's going to require a great effort from Sam Darnold in that offense, and then a defense that just really shows up on any given day, which can happen in bowl games. We've seen it happen before.
Great stuff from Patrick Murphy. Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you to all the listeners out there for tuning in to the show. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.